It was October 25th, 1984, and the air in West Germany was thick with the chill of autumn. Günther Stoll was sitting in his quiet home in the town of Anshausen, but his mind was far from peaceful. For weeks, he had been telling his wife that unknown people were following him and watching his every move. His wife tried to comfort him, thinking he was simply suffering from a bout of paranoia or stress. He was an unemployed food engineer, and the pressure of finding work may have been weighing on his mind. But on this specific night, his fear reached a breaking point that no one could have predicted. Stoll sat in his chair, staring into space when he suddenly jumped up and shouted at the top of his lungs. He yelled that he finally understood everything, and that he had the answer he was looking for. His wife watched in confusion as he grabbed a scrap of paper and a pen from the table. With frantic energy, he scribbled 6 letters onto the paper in large, messy strokes. The letters spelled out a word that had no meaning in the German language or any other known tongue. He had written YOGTZE, and then he immediately crossed the letters out with a heavy line, without explaining what the word meant or what he had discovered. Stoll ran out of the house and got into his Volkswagen Golf. He told his wife he was going to a local pub in Hager to clear his head. This was the last time his wife would ever see him in their home. Stoll arrived at the pub called Papa J, but he did not go inside to have a drink or socialize with his neighbors. Instead, he walked in and suddenly fell to the floor, losing consciousness in front of everyone. Witnesses claimed he seemed to be in a state of extreme psychological distress before he collapsed. When he woke up, he did not ask for help or explain what had happened to his body. He simply stood up, walked back to his car, and drove away into the dark night. No one knows exactly where he went during the next few hours of his life. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 truck drivers were making their way down the A45 Autobahn. They noticed a white Volkswagen Golf crashed in a ditch near the Hagen-Sud exit. The car looked badly damaged, and the drivers pulled over to see if anyone needed assistance. As they approached the wreckage, they saw a man in a white jacket walking away from the car. The man seemed suspicious and quickly disappeared into the darkness of the surrounding woods. The truck drivers did not chase him because their primary concern was the person still inside the vehicle. When they looked inside the car, they found Günther Stoll in the passenger seat. He was completely naked and appeared to be suffering from horrific internal and external injuries. Despite his condition, he was still conscious and able to speak a few final words to the men. The truck drivers asked him what had happened and who had done this to him. Stoll whispered that there were 4 men with him in the car and that they had beaten him. When they asked if those men were his friends, he shook his head and said they were strangers. The drivers called for an ambulance immediately, but it was already too late for the former food engineer. Stoll lost consciousness again while he was being transported to the hospital. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival, leaving behind a trail of questions that would never be answered. When the police began their investigation, they expected to find a typical hit-and-run or a standard car accident. However, the forensic evidence told a story that was physically impossible based on the scene at the highway. The autopsy revealed that Stoll had not been injured by the car crashing into the ditch. The medical examiner found that Stoll had been run over by a completely different vehicle at a different location. The injuries to his body were consistent with being crushed while he was lying flat on the ground. Furthermore, the evidence suggested that he was already naked when the other vehicle hit him. This meant that after being run over elsewhere, someone had picked up his broken body and put him back into his own car. They then drove his Volkswagen to the Autobahn and pushed it into the ditch to make it look like an accident. The killers had even placed him in the passenger seat rather than the driver's side. The police were also haunted by the testimony of the truck drivers who saw the man in the white jacket. Despite a massive search of the area, no trace of the mysterious figure was ever found. They could not determine if the man was one of the 4 attackers Stoll had mentioned before he died. The investigation then turned back to the scrap of paper Stoll had written on before leaving his house. Detectives and cryptographers spent years trying to figure out what the word YOGTZE actually meant. They looked for codes, chemical formulas, and even coordinates, but they found nothing that fit. Some people suggested that the word was a misspelling of a Romanian radio call sign. Others thought it might be a reference to a specific type of yogurt or a biological ingredient related to his work as a food engineer. None of these theories could explain why he was so terrified or why he was murdered. There was also the strange encounter at his childhood home earlier that night. A woman who lived in the house where Stoll grew up reported that a man had knocked on her door late at night. He looked disheveled and spoke about a terrifying incident that was about to happen. This woman did not recognize him as the former resident and told him to go away. It is believed that this man was Stoll, wandering through his past while being hunted by something in his present. His movements that night suggest a man who was desperately trying to find a safe place to hide. The case of the YOGTZE note remains one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in German criminal history. Every lead that the police followed eventually turned into a dead end. There were no witnesses to the actual crime of him being run over, and no murder weapon was ever found. Even the motive for the killing remained a complete mystery to his family and friends. Stoll did not have any known enemies, and he was not involved in any criminal activities that would lead to an execution. His paranoia seemed like a symptom of a mental breakdown, yet his fears turned out to be deadly accurate. The fact that he was found naked added another layer of bizarre confusion to the entire timeline. Investigators wondered if he had been stripped as a form of humiliation, or if he had taken off his clothes himself during a mental episode. However, the presence of the other men and the staged crash site pointed toward a calculated crime. Decades have passed since that cold October night, and the trail has gone completely cold. The scrap of paper with the handwritten letters has been studied by thousands of internet sleuths and professional investigators alike. It remains a silent witness to a secret that died along with its author. The mystery of Günther Stoll is a reminder that the world can sometimes be much darker than it appears on the surface. We may never know who the 4 men were or what they wanted from an unemployed engineer. Some puzzles are missing too many pieces to ever be put back together. Perhaps the answer really was on that piece of paper, hidden in a word that only one man understood. Or perhaps the letters were just the final, confused thoughts of a mind that had seen something it was never meant to see. Some secrets are meant to be taken to the grave, even if they are written down in plain sight.